fear that feeds. The demon came through the wall like smoke passing through silk. Captain Vrel of the Galactic Coalition watched his bridge crew freeze. Not from discipline. Not from training. They froze because every instinct in their 4-billion-year-old evolutionary history screamed at them to become invisible, to stop breathing, to pray that the nightmare wouldn't notice them. The creature had no fixed shape. It was shadow and angles that hurt to look at, limbs that bent in directions space shouldn't allow, and eyes, so many eyes, that reflected not light but the deepest terrors of whoever looked into them. It drifted across the command deck, feeding. Vrel could see the faint shimmer around it growing brighter as his crew's fear intensified. Fire, Vrel managed to whisper. Nothing happened. His weapons officer sat rigid, mandibles locked, staring at the demon with all 6 eyes. A thin keening sound escaped from somewhere in the officer's thorax. The demon turned toward the sound like a flower turning toward the sun. Vrel had fought in the Kresh Rebellion. He had held the line at the breaking of Andrus Gate when 3 systems fell in a single day. He was not supposed to feel like this, small and helpless and certain that death was too kind a word for what was coming. Then the creature was gone, sliding back through reality as if the universe itself couldn't wait to close behind it. Vrel's crew remained frozen for 17 seconds. When they could finally move again, 3 of them collapsed. 2 began making the high-pitched distress calls of their species. The weapons officer had to be sedated. This was the 14th coalition ship hit this month. The demons had appeared 6 months ago, tearing holes in space near the galactic rim and spreading inward. They didn't conquer. They didn't communicate. They simply appeared, fed on fear and vanished, leaving crews broken and minds shattered. The coalition had tried everything. Quantum torpedoes passed through the demons like light through glass. Energy shields meant nothing to creatures that existed partially outside normal space. The Torish Collective had unleashed a planet-killer weapon on a demon swarm near Proxima Vale. The demons had seemed to enjoy it, feeding on the terror of nearby colonies as they watched the weapon fire. 4 species had already evacuated their core worlds. 2 more were considering surrender, though no one knew how to surrender to something that didn't want anything except fear. On the coalition capital world of Sanctuary Prime, High Diplomat Kasev reviewed the latest reports with growing despair. Her scales had turned the pale gray of hopelessness. Another fleet lost at the Valen crossing, her aide reported. Not destroyed. Just broken. The crews are alive but unresponsive. Staring. Some of them are still screaming. Kasev had served the coalition for 300 years. She had negotiated peace between species that had fought for millennia. She had helped build an alliance of 67 civilizations spanning half the galaxy. And now she was watching it crumble before an enemy that couldn't be fought, couldn't be reasoned with, and couldn't be stopped. What about the eldest? She asked. The eldest were the first species to reach the stars, ancient beyond measure, their technology bordering on the incomprehensible. They sealed their systems, her aide said quietly. They're hiding, they said. He hesitated. They said they remember these creatures from the before time. That they cannot be killed. Only survived. Kasev felt something crack inside her careful diplomatic composure. Then we're lost. Perhaps not. Her aide brought up a star chart, highlighting a small yellow star on the far edge of coalition space. There is one species we haven't asked. The humans. The primitives? Kasev's crest flared in surprise. They've barely left their own system. They still use chemical rockets for half their fleet. What could they possibly offer? I've been studying them, her aide said. He brought up files. Human history, human culture, human wars. They call their world Earth, but everyone else calls it something different. A death world. Class 9 hazard rating. Everything on that planet is either trying to kill them or evolved specifically to survive them. Kasev scanned the files. Predators that hunted in packs. Diseases that jumped between species. Weather that could flatten cities. Humans had survived ice ages, megavolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and their own repeated attempts at self-destruction. They've been fighting monsters since they lived in caves, her aide continued. Literally. They have stories from before they had written language about hunting the things that hunted them. And they won. They're still primitive compared to the coalition, Kasev argued. Yes, her aide agreed. But they have something we don't. Look at their entertainment. Their stories. Their training. Kasev scrolled through human media. Horror films. Survival games. Military training that seemed designed to break soldiers and rebuild them harder. Stories about facing fear, overcoming it, weaponizing it. They don't just survive fear, her aide said quietly. They study it, master it, use it. They've been doing it for their entire existence. Kasev was silent for a long moment, watching footage of human soldiers training for something called psychological warfare, teaching each other to become the thing others feared. It's insane, she said finally. Yes, her aide agreed. But we're desperate. And the humans? He pulled up one final file, a quote from human history from a war leader named Patton. May God have mercy upon my enemies because I won't. Kasev made her decision. Send a ship to Earth. Quietly. If the council knew I was asking help from primitives. She didn't finish. Tell the humans we need them. Tell them we're facing demons. And see if Deathworlders know how to kill nightmares. 2328. What humans bring. The coalition diplomatic ship descended toward Earth like a falling star, its hull gleaming silver against the blue of the planet's atmosphere. Inside, Ambassador Kasev tried not to think about the fact that she was placing the galaxy's hopes on a species that still had wars, poverty, and something called reality television. The landing site was a military base in a region humans called Colorado. Mountains surrounded the facility, their peaks white with frozen water. Kasev found it beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Her homeworld had been carefully climate-controlled for 6,000 years. Earth was wild, raw, and completely indifferent to whether anything lived on it or not. A human delegation waited on the tarmac. They wore uniforms, dark green and tan patterns designed to blend with terrain. Camouflage, Kasev's briefing had called it. The concept of needing to hide from your environment still seemed alien to most coalition species. The lead human stepped forward. She was smaller than Kasev expected, but there was something in the way she moved, controlled, efficient, predatory. Her skin was dark, her hair cut short, and her eyes missed nothing. Ambassador Kasev, the human said. Her translator rendered the words in perfect coalition standard. I'm Colonel Sarah Chin, United Earth Defense Command. Welcome to Earth. Thank you for seeing us, Kasev replied, grateful her scales weren't showing the fear gray they'd been for weeks. I know this request is unusual. You're asking us to fight demons that eat fear and can't be killed by conventional weapons, Chin said flatly. I've read the briefing. Unusual doesn't cover it. They moved inside into a facility that looked more like a cave than a command center. Kasev realized that was intentional. Humans built underground because their world had taught them that being exposed meant being vulnerable. The briefing room was filled with more humans, military officers, scientists, and specialists whose exact roles Kasev couldn't identify. Chin gestured to the seats, though Kasev noticed none of the humans sat down. They stood, ready, as if relaxation was something they'd trained themselves out of. Show us, Chin said. Kasev's aide activated the holographic display. Images from attacked coalition ships filled the air. The demons in their terrible glory, crews frozen in terror, the aftermath of shattered minds. The humans watched in silence. Kasev studied their faces, looking for the fear response she'd seen in every coalition species. She saw concentration instead. Analysis. One human was taking notes. Another was recording measurements from the display. You're not afraid, Kasev said, unable to hide her surprise. We're terrified, Chin corrected. We're just trained not to let it stop us. She zoomed in on one of the demons, freezing the image. What have you tried? Everything, Kasev's aide said. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, nuclear devices, quantum disruptors, reality anchors, psionic attacks. Nothing works. They exist partially outside our dimension. Most attacks pass through them. What about biological agents? Asked a human with graying hair and the insignia of a scientist. They're not biological. At least not in any way we understand. Chemical? Sonic? Thermal? All attempted. All failed. The humans exchanged glances. Kasev saw something pass between them, some unspoken communication bred from working together in circumstances she couldn't imagine. You're thinking about this wrong, Chin said finally. You're trying to kill them. You can't. So don't. Then what do we do? Kasev asked. You learn from them. Chin pulled up footage of a demon feeding, its form brightening as it absorbed fear. They hunt psychologically. They're predators and fear is their food. Everything they do is designed to maximize terror. The way they move. The way they look. It's all threat display. Like Earth predators, another human officer said. Snakes that rattle. Cats that hiss. They're not just trying to kill you. They're trying to scare you first. Because fear makes the meal better, added the scientist. It's not just nutrition. It's pleasure. They enjoy it. Kasev felt her scales ripple with revulsion. How does knowing this help us? Because predators have patterns, Shin said. And patterns have weaknesses. They feed on fear, which means they're drawn to it. They have to be. And if they're drawn to it. She smiled, and Kasev suddenly understood why humans had survived their death world. We can bait them. You want to lure them? Kasev's crest rose in alarm. They'll slaughter you. Maybe, Chin agreed. But your people freeze when they're scared. You shut down. Humans don't. We get angry. We fight harder. Our fear response evolved on a planet where giving up meant extinction. She gestured to the other humans. Every person in this room has been through training designed to expose them to their worst fears and teach them to function anyway. We've already faced our demons. These are just new ones. This is madness, Kasev whispered. Yes, Chin said. That's why it might work. Your coalition fights fear by trying to eliminate it. Humans fight fear by walking straight into it with a plan and enough spite to see it through. She pulled up a tactical display, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. We'll need 8 people. Small team. Specialists. Psychological warfare, asymmetric tactics, survival training. We don't fight these things head-on. We hunt them. Track their patterns. Learn their behavior. Then we flip the script. Flip the script. Kasev's translator struggled with the idiom. Make them afraid, Chin said simply. They've been apex predators their whole existence. Nothing has ever hunted them. We change that. We become the thing they fear. And we teach you how to do the same. Kasev looked at the humans, these small, fragile creatures from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They weren't proposing a battle. They were proposing something far more human. Revenge served cold, calculated, and without mercy. When can you leave? Kasev asked. 72 hours, Chin replied. We'll need full tactical data, access to attacked sites, and authorization to operate without coalition oversight. What we do won't look like military doctrine. It'll look like terrorism. Psychological warfare. Dirty tricks. Whatever it takes, Kasev said. Chen's smile widened. It wasn't a kind expression. Then welcome to the human approach, Ambassador. We don't fight monsters by being civilized. We fight them by being scarier. The hunters become the hunted. The coalition station orbiting Kelver 7 had been abandoned for 3 weeks. The demon attack had left the facility intact but empty. Its crew evacuated after 16 personnel went catatonic and 4 others died from what the medical reports called acute existential horror. Now, 8 humans floated through its silent corridors. Colonel Chin moved point, her weapon held low and ready. Behind her came 7 others. Martinez, their psychologist and interrogation specialist. Okoye, demolitions and trap engineering. Park, xenobiology and field medicine. Reeves, signals intelligence and electronic warfare. Nakamura, close quarters combat specialist. Foster, astrophysics and dimensional theory. And Hayes, sniper and observer. They weren't the coalition's idea of soldiers. They carried strange equipment. Motion sensors, chemical markers, acoustic generators, even what looked like old-fashioned mirrors. Their armor was light, designed for mobility rather than protection. Everything about them seemed wrong for fighting demons. That was the point. Contact, Reeves whispered, her sensors flickering. Dimensional breach forming, Section 7. Acknowledged, Chin replied calmly. Hayes, Foster, you're on observation. Everyone else, positions. The team scattered like water, each member moving to predetermined locations throughout the station. They didn't run. They didn't rush. Their movements were practiced, almost casual. The demon came through reality like a knife through silk. It was larger than the ones in the footage, maybe feeding had made it grow. Its form shifted constantly, all wrong angles and shadows that seemed to absorb light. The eyes appeared randomly across its mass, each one reflecting nightmares back at anyone who looked. It drifted through Section 7 searching for fear. Instead it found something else. Music began playing from hidden speakers. Not coalition music, something human. Discordant. Aggressive. The demon paused, its form rippling with confusion. The sound wasn't fear. It was anger. Defiance. Then the lights changed. The soft blue of coalition standard shifted to harsh red strobes, pulsing at a frequency designed to disorient. The demon's movement became erratic, its shape flickering. Interesting, Foster's voice came through the team's comms. It's destabilizing. Light frequency affects its dimensional anchoring. Noted, Chin replied. Martinez, you're up. From a concealed position, Martinez activated a holographic projector. Images flooded the corridor, humans. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All staring at the demon with cold, calculating expressions. Not fear. Not rage. Just assessment. The look of a predator sizing up prey. The demon recoiled. It's working, Park whispered. Biometric readings show stress responses. It's confused. More than confused, Martinez said. It's uncomfortable. These things evolved to be the scariest thing in the room. We just showed it something that looks at it like it's food. The demon lashed out, its form extending toward the holograms. They passed through harmlessly, but the movement exposed something. A pattern in how it manifested, a brief solidification when it attacked. Got it? Nakamura confirmed. 0.7 seconds of physical presence during aggressive action. That's our window. Phase 2, Chin ordered. Okoye triggered her traps. Not explosives, those wouldn't work. Instead, the corridor filled with aerosol compounds, a mixture of chemical irritants, pheromone analogs, and something Foster had designed based on dimensional theory that she admitted was mostly guesswork and spite. The demon shrieked. It wasn't a sound any coalition species had heard from them before. It was pain, confusion, and underneath it all, fear. Keep pressure, Chin commanded, her voice ice calm. The team moved in practice coordination. Haze fired from concealment, not at the demon but at mirrors positioned throughout the corridor. The laser reflected, creating a cage of light at specific frequencies. The demon twisted, trying to escape, but each movement toward a gap triggered another trap. Sonic pulses, electromagnetic bursts, chemical sprays. They weren't trying to kill it. They were studying it, learning. And they were teaching it something new, that it could be hurt. Dimensional breach collapsing, Foster reported. It's trying to retreat. Let it, Chin said. But mark it first. Reeves activated a quantum tracker, a device that attached markers to the demon's partially dimensional form. When it fled back through reality, it would carry those markers with it. The demon vanished, leaving the corridor empty except for the 8 humans. Did we win? Okoye asked. No, Chin replied, checking her equipment. We learned. And we taught. That demon came here expecting fear and food. Instead it got hurt, confused, and hunted. Now it's going to tell the others. Demons communicate? Martinez asked. Everything communicates, Chin said. Fear is a language. We just spoke it back. Over the next 4 weeks, the pattern repeated across 17 coalition locations. Each time the human team refined their approach. They learned that the demons avoided certain light frequencies. That specific chemical compounds caused them pain. That forcing them to experience unexpected stimuli disrupted their ability to feed. But more importantly, they learned that demons could be trained. The creatures began changing their behavior. They became cautious. They started probing locations before fully manifesting. Some avoided stations where humans had been entirely. The demons were learning to be afraid. It's working, Ambassador Kasev said, watching footage from the latest engagement. Demon attacks are down 30% in human-protected sectors. Not enough, Chin replied. They stood in the command center of a coalition dreadnought, reviewing tactical data. They're adapting. Getting smarter. We need to escalate. How? We stop defending and start hunting. Chin pulled up star charts showing known demon breach points. They retreat to somewhere between dimensions. We've been tracking their quantum signatures. Foster thinks she can build a device to follow them. Into their dimension? Kasev's scales went pale. That's suicide. Probably, Chin agreed. But that's where they feel safe. Where they don't expect threats. We take 8 people through, we hurt them where they live, we make them understand that nowhere is safe anymore. Why would you do this? Kasev asked. These aren't your people being killed. This isn't your fight. Chin was quiet for a moment. 800,000 years ago, my ancestors sat in caves, terrified of the dark. Every shadow could hide something that wanted to eat them. They could have stayed in those caves, frozen by fear. Instead, they picked up sharp sticks and walked into the darkness. They hunted the things that hunted them. That's what humans do, Ambassador. We don't hide from monsters. We become worse monsters. She turned to Kasev, and the ambassador saw something in those human eyes, something ancient and cold and absolutely certain. Besides, Chin added, they made a mistake. They came to this dimension and started feeding on fear. They just didn't realize that one species has been weaponizing fear for its entire evolution. We're going to teach them what real terror looks like. 3 days later, 8 humans stepped through a dimensional breach into a realm of shadow and nightmare. The demons were waiting. But so were the humans. And for the first time in their existence, the fear eaters learned what it meant to be prey. The humans moved through the demon dimension like smoke, setting traps, creating chaos, teaching the ancient predators that fear could flow both ways. When they emerged 72 hours later, exhausted and wounded but alive, they brought data, proof, and a message they'd left written in chemical burns across the demon dimension's fabric. You're not the scariest thing in the universe anymore. Demon attacks dropped by 70% in the following month. The creatures began avoiding Coalition space entirely, retreating to the dark between galaxies. The Coalition celebrated. Kasev received commendations. Earth received technology transfers and formal alliance status. But Colonel Chin and her team didn't celebrate. They trained. They prepared. They waited. Because they knew something the Coalition was just learning. Humans didn't stop at winning. They made sure the enemy never forgot what losing felt like. And